It's loading, it's loading. Okay, ready.
Is that? Hello, everyone. Welcome today to our campaign dubbed Do Better. Welcome not to our campaign dubbed Know Better, Do Better, a deep discussion into human trafficking. I know we have started a bit late. We're supposed to start at 3 p.m. East African time. Due to our technical difficulties, we have been pushed to start at this time. However, we will proceed with the campaign. These are sessions that we are going to have continuous throughout the week, following weeks up to July, end of July. So we'll be much engaged with you, our listeners, and you can join us on live on our Facebook page. This is Heart Kenya Facebook page, HAART Kenya. You can also join us on our YouTube page, Heart Kenya, HAART Kenya. I have also our other partners present in this discussion and other colleagues present in this discussion. But before they introduce themselves, I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Louis Otieno. I work for Awareness Against Human Trafficking, that is Heart Kenya. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a campaign, online discussion campaign, just to get to understand human trafficking and the trends that are appearing when it comes to human trafficking, both nationally and in other countries abroad, depending on the cases that we identify when it comes to trafficking. I welcome all of you, and I hope that you'll be with us throughout the whole sessions, which will be running in a series of 6 sessions that are scheduled, that I'll be able to share the dates and the timelines for you to be part of us. Human trafficking is a crime and a serious violation of human rights, and vulnerable population are at a heightened risk of being trafficked all over the world. Despite this, preventing trafficking and assisting victims needs to be addressed in a comprehensive manner. The increasing cases of trafficking have drawn calls for counter-trafficking actors to better incorporate anti-trafficking initiatives into prevention and protection efforts. This underscores the need to build anti-trafficking capacity, not only to the counter-trafficking actors, but also to other stakeholders and the citizens of the community in general. The responsibility to stop human trafficking falls in the shoulder of everyone, including national government agencies, local administration, and governmental organizations, law enforcement agencies, the private sector, religious bodies, and also the citizens at large. To combat trafficking, a sense of communal courage to spread a high level of awareness and social solutions are needed. And it begins with the strong will of all actors, agents, and stakeholders, together with the citizen, to take responsibility to ensure restriction or curbing human trafficking. The joint effort should also be accompanied with concrete actions and responses, plans and projects and programs, and even policies to ensure that we effectively and efficiently combat this crime. In order to support the anti-trafficking joint action, Heart Kenya, Stop the Traffic Kenya, Tangaza University College, and have partnered to host online discussions on addressing human trafficking, focusing on understanding human trafficking, prevention and protection responses, as well as identifying and referring or managing cases of trafficking. So participants who will be able to join us from different levels will be able to be able to discuss and be able to understand trafficking together with our experts who will be acting as panelists and be able to just discuss in depth the level and approaches to combating the crime. As I mentioned earlier, I work with Heart Kenya. So Awareness Against Human Trafficking is a registered non-governmental organization that is focused in offering prevention measures through awareness and also supporting victims of trafficking, both nationally and at times we also go out further to East Africa, depending also the cases that we are able to identify regarding human trafficking. So the sessions will be start today. This is the first session, whereby we'll just have an overview, in-depth discussion on us understanding human trafficking. Then the second session will be taking place 9th of June, same time as from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. When we'll be discussing now matters child trafficking in Kenya. Then we'll have the third session on the 23rd of June, having a discussion on sex trafficking in Kenya. We'll have a fourth session again, looking at labor migration and human trafficking, the correlation, and just discussing general what is happening when it comes to the two concepts. We'll also, this will be now done on 7th July. The fifth session will be done on 21st July, where we'll be discussing on the legal frameworks and the structures in combating human trafficking, looking at the Kenya perspective. Our final session will be on the 23rd of July. 23rd of July, we'll have a discussion on the role of different actors and citizens in the prevention of trafficking. This will be a live conversation involving different partners and also experts, and also us as citizens joining us on live on our social media page. We are hoping that this information and this discussion will be able to unearth the other techniques and advices so that we'll be able not only to improve the capacity of actors in the counter-trafficking space, but to draw attention to the issue of trafficking for further capacity building and sensitization within other related sectors and communities. So after the sessions, personally, I'm hoping that those who will be with us will be able to collaborate together in the prevention and protection when it comes to the fight against human trafficking. The timelines and the sessions will be shared on our social media pages. And if you have also, if you're interested to continue with the session, we kindly ask you to reach out to us. We'll be sharing more information on how best to get to us, but you can also reach out to us on our Heart Kenya's Facebook page, our YouTube page, or also our email, which is info@heartkenya.org. Without wasting much time, I would want to invite our moderator, Michelle, to introduce our panelists and as we proceed with the session. Thank you very much, and you are most welcome to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louis. Thank you for the introduction and the overview of the campaign. Thank you for going in depth, addressing every topic we're going to, basically giving an overview of the few weeks we're going to have. So I think I'll also start with an apology. Apologies for the hiccup. You'd think that a year later we'd be experts in the online space, but we're still learning. So hopefully this is also a good example of what we're aiming to do. The learning, especially with us who consider ourselves, who worked in the industry for a while. I know sometimes you get to a point and you're wondering, why am I going for another meeting where we're going to talk about human trafficking and child trafficking? And what details can I learn about that I haven't learned about in the past? So I think the technical hiccup has kind of given a proper example of the importance of always learning and always edifying ourselves. So the main aim and the main goal of this series is to do just that. We want to edify ourselves to get a different perspective on the issues of human trafficking. So I know a lot of our conversations have become may have become monotonous or may have gotten a few people jaded in one way or another, because we'll talk about, for example, more collaboration and then move into our different fields or different activities and forget about collaboration, or we lack the tools for collaboration, for example. So what we hope to achieve is, but at the end of this series, we hope that all of you will be able to identify specific partners. So, for example, with the panelists today, maybe you learn something from Joselyn from Tangaza, and afterwards, you know that if I want an expert on the academic side of this, I can talk to Jocelyn, particularly when with the coming weeks, hopefully you'll identify someone in the panel or an idea from one of the panelists, and that will help actually improve our response or edify our response in this work we're doing in anti-human trafficking. So without further ado, I'll let our panelists. So today we have a light panel, and seeing as that our time is far much spent, we'll keep the discussion quite brief so that we don't eat into the time that you've probably allotted to something else. So I'll let both panelists introduce themselves briefly, and then we can get into the nitty-gritties of today's session. So karibu, Mr. Poladot, I'll let you give an introduction to yourself. As I say that, I realize I haven't introduced myself. My name is Michelle Koinange. I'm the coordinator of Stop the Traffic Kenya, which is a member-based organization and is open to civil society organizations, private sector, as well as individuals who work in the fight against human trafficking. So karibu and welcome, Mr. Poladot as well.
Thank you very much, Michelle. My name is Paula Dutch. I'm the Executive Director at Trace Kenya. Trace Kenya is an NGO that focuses on prevention of trafficking in persons. We're based in the coast region of Kenya. Our main work really targets on issues of forms of trafficking that exist within our context. And mainly these are domestic servitude, street begging, commercial sexual exploitation of children, sex slavery, sexual exploitation, child labor, and forced migrant labor, which occurs within our region. And the forced migrant labor also includes migrant labor that happens within Kenya, for foreigners that come into Kenya. Further, we hold projects that seek to protect children from both violence and trafficking in general. And we work to provide services to victims of trafficking, as well as offer litigation and legal support. Beyond that, we work to do advocacy through partnership, so that we're able to hold government to account on areas that then protect citizenry from becoming victims of trafficking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the brief introduction and overview of Trace Kenya and your role. I'll invite Ms. Joselyn Guarero. Kindly.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joselyn Guarero. I am a lecturer at Tangaza University College. I lecture or teach or facilitate learning. Mostly that is what I do, facilitate learning at the Institute of Youth Studies, where I teach courses in child and youth studies and also teach child protection courses. In Tangaza, we have a few schools, actually 3 schools. We have a school of arts and social sciences, we have a school of education, and we have a school of theology. In all these schools, in all the departments within the schools also, we work towards social transformation towards bettering our communities through education, research, and also community engagement. So I'm quite excited to be part of this forum be part of the partner in organizing this campaign. And my university is quite supportive to activities that support and ensure human dignity, guided by our many values on ensuring the well-being and happiness and of the society, such as preferential treatment for the poor, believing in the dignity of every human being. And so that is why we are together with the other stakeholders to work together to ensure that we can play a role as a university towards, eliminating completely or in a way preventing human trafficking in the world and even in our space, first starting in our space. So thank you very much, Michelle, for the opportunity to introduce myself. We'll talk more later.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So I won't let Joselyn step away for too long. So before I get into the questions and our discussion today, I'd like to remind all the guests who are joining us that you can use the chat function on whatever platform you're joining us to share your questions or to share some feedback. And I'm sure our team behind the scenes will be happy to relay the same. And I'll also keep track of the same on my end. So my first question is very, it feeds into what Louis has just shared and what both Paul and Joselyn have been able to share with us. We have worked together. I know based on the hiccup, maybe it didn't seem like it, but we have worked on this, and we've had a few meetings, a lot of meetings to give ourselves to develop or to plan this series. We all have our ideas, we all have our expectations for this meeting, for these meetings. So I'll let Joselyn share her perspective or her vision of this series from the academic side. So I know we've mapped out how the weeks will look like. I know we've identified who we want to join in, but for the guests, for the people who are joining us, what do you hope that as we begin the series, what do you hope that they'll go home with or take home with based on the academic side? Do you have like a list or an idea of or a vision of what you hope the listeners will take back with them after the series is concluded? Justin, you're muted, sorry. You're still muted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Michelle, for that good question. I would want us to look at human trafficking as something that hurts people. I would want us to look at human trafficking as something that hurts communities. And I want us to look at this as a crime. I want us to look at this as a violation of human dignity, violation of human rights, and that we are able to reach people, especially those who are involved in trafficking, to touch their hearts, to transform their ways, to be able to understand that human trafficking hurts people, human trafficking hurts communities. I would also want us to make aware communities that there are certain subtle ways through which people are involved in human trafficking unawares. So I hope by the end of this series of webinars, we will be able to reach as many people as possible to make them understand what is it that is real, referred to as human trafficking, what causes it, and how can we act as communities to ensure that we mitigate some of the causes or some of the push factors that lead people to being trafficked or to engaging others in trafficking.
Thank you very much. Paul, over to you. We've had a lot of webinars similar to this. Like we've had a discussion on child trafficking, for example. We've had discussions on sex trafficking. We've had discussions on these topics before. So what, from the CSO perspective, from the people who are joining and they're looking at it as, I've worked in this industry for 10 years or 5 years, or enough years for me to consider myself an expert, for example. What do you think they can gain from participating or from joining this webinar and this series? And what do you hope they get as they go through the different weeks of this series?
It is my expectation that by the end of these sessions, we'll have understood the nexus between academia and practitioners, the academic world that Josephine so provides, and the practitioners, those of us in the field. We should be able to now narrow the gap in terms of this information and thereby build more knowledge. Knowledge is always there to be built and enhanced. It is my hope then that participants in this will be able to develop better skills in tackling human trafficking, mainly because the forms and types of trafficking keeps changing tact, and it's basically nearly formless. But at least you can be able to understand how to tackle it better, and how, with our different perspectives, to understand from where we sit or where we work, which are some of the ways our colleagues have tried and it has worked for them. Therefore, buy from that. That's my hope.
Thank you. Something that is coming up from both of you is the issue of collaboration and the recognition that we can't work, or one stakeholder cannot work in this industry by themselves. So do you have examples from your background that show the benefits of collaboration? Either it don't have to be for, between CISO and academia or academia and CISO, but do you have examples of how collaboration, and especially coordinated collaboration, has aided you in defeating this vice or fighting against this vice? I'll go back to Paul, and then the same question will be answered by Justin. So, Paul.
What you mentioned is quite correct, Michelle. Human trafficking cannot be tackled by an individual organization or an individual outfit, be it government or non-government, at any moment. For instance, we in the process of working, we keep saying that we're only complementing work that is done by others, and therefore we just refer our partners along the way. As much as possible, we refer to each other. In order to refer to a partner, you need to collaborate with them. A good example is when we work with the Department of Children's Services, who in turn works with the Directorate of Criminal Investigation over a matter that may involve a child who's been trafficked, let's say for child labor. And if this child is foreign, then immigration officials are brought on board. So then you already see from the onset, we have 4 organizations that are working together, and or 4 departments. And indeed, the 5th one could be judiciary, because the child has to, there must be court orders that provide for the child's travel from one country back to the next in terms of repatriation. Collaboration is a must, even among civil society. For instance, we do have a transit shelter that cannot keep a child for a long period of time, but then we need, if there's a matter before court, we need our partner who can keep the child for a longer period while the matter is being adjudicated before court. So I cannot overemphasize the need to collaborate.
Thank you, Paul. Justin?
Thank you very much, Michelle and Paul. I have always loved reading or looking at sustainable development goals. And this is something that we go through with my students in times that we are trying to establish in which direction our education is taking us in trying to, to achieve the sustainable development goals. And when I reach at number 17, I always feel that there is great recognition for partnership in achieving sustainability within our communities. And in this case, I have, and also the universities have worked towards partnering with other organizations. In fact, partnership is one of the core values of Tangaza University College, that we believe in partnering with communities, we believe in partnering with government, we believe in partnering with other organizations in different ways. In which ways? These ways includes in conducting research. And when we conduct research within communities on issues such as the issue we are talking about, we take that opportunity to partner with the people who are giving information, to partner with the people who are giving approvals, to partner with the people who can give the interventions that are proposed within such a paper or within such, research report. So partnership is key. And the most important thing to know is that once, while we start partnerships then, or while we are engaging in partnership, we should not forget that communities are key partners in their own safety, in their own well-being, in their own development. And I'm sure when we are looking at the causes of human trafficking, we realize that some of the causes of human trafficking includes things like the extreme poverty in our communities, which is one of the goals to eliminate extreme poverty, and of the SGD, and lack of employment, poor governance and conflict in countries, social inequality, social injustices within communities. And when we realize the power of partnering with communities to empower them to transform themselves and transform their circumstances and their situations, then I get to think that partnership becomes really important in working towards, counter trafficking of persons. So there is a lot of space that we as a university, and I'm sure other universities, have taken in these partnerships in terms of research, in terms of providing resources such as books, information booklets, information on who to refer to cases, as Paul was talking, that there are other partners that are in play when you're dealing with cases of trafficking. So a university having such information that they can share with other people in community. Also space for training, that the universities are not closed from our communities, that we provide a space. In Tangaza, in fact, we are really, we have so much openness to engaging communities, to allowing them to come in and get information on specific areas that they're interested in. So providing the manpower for community awareness, creation, and also education. And this is actually the place that we can come in as a university. And in addition, organizational support with capacity building, for human resource, and also, building capacities for structures to ensure that we have the right structures to support us in this mission of safeguarding, in this mission of protecting or prevention of human trafficking. So in all this, the university engages in community outreach programs or activities where we have awareness creation, trainings, and consultancies that are useful for the other organizations. And the university is also open to learning, and through research and community engagement of other communities and also other stakeholders, we get to learn a lot of what is happening in the ground. But the key thing is that we are open as a university to partner, collaborate with other actors in fighting human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you very much to you both for the detailed answers. I like how you've all broken it down in a different perspective. I know with Paul, we've gotten to understand that there are structures already in place to support and to continue collaboration amongst stakeholders. I know some of those structures include the national referral mechanism, which actually details and guides on that process. With Joselyn, we've been able to look at a partnership from a different perspective, and also look at stakeholders as community, look at community members as stakeholders. Sometimes we are guilty of having these conversations and talking about collaboration without necessarily looking at the community feedback. So we go to the boardrooms and make these amazing plans, then go to the field and we wonder, what community were we thinking of when we were structuring or when we were coming up with these great ideas? So I think I like the different in approach, and also the way you've both fed into each other's points. Thank you very much. Speaking, Josephine, something came up, and this is on research and resources. I know we don't talk about it often, or we haven't discussed it often, but do you have resources that we as a panelist or as moderator, or even the attendees, can look into to learn, to understand the human trafficking situation in the country? Are there resources you've worked on, or Tangaza has worked on, or even partner universities have worked on, that can help our listeners go read up, learn a bit more about the situation, be it on child trafficking, be it sex trafficking, or human trafficking in general? Would you have links to such resources?
Now, for this particular topic, human trafficking, we have, collected information from what other people have done in terms of research and reports. And actually, I know one of the reports that we have is from HEART. So we have quite some resources that we have picked and put together that people can look through to understand more on human trafficking. We also, with the help of our librarians, we can, direct you to papers, certain databases where you can access papers and information on human trafficking. Yes, so the information is there, and it's accessible. However, the modality of accessing is what might not have been developed so as for now, whereby like the sharing of those resources, how do we do it with communities and other partners? That is not yet worked on or through.
Okay, thank you very much. Paul,
yeah.
As the same question, but in a different way. You as CSO, I know, have done a lot of work. As Trace Kenya, you guys have done a lot of good work in Mombasa with partners in different counties. And I know you've also been in the industry for a long time and have worked with very many organizations. Do you, would you have like a referral to resources that CSOs have developed, or resources that you have developed that people can go back and look into, or maybe share with their partners so that they can be able to understand the human trafficking situation better?
Thank you, Michelle. You are quite right that resources and data in our work is pretty important. There is and there are pieces and bits of resources, such as the one Josephine has just mentioned, that have come from our colleagues from HEART and from other colleagues, particularly international organizations that work in the counter-trafficking subsector. We as partners have also worked, again, in conjunction with others, to provide materials that give up-to-date information. But most of this, unfortunately, has been resource constrained, and therefore they are not quite up-to-date. You'll find perhaps the latest information that is well articulated could be 2 to 3 years back. However, these pieces of information are available from the different actors, right from us who are working in the communities here, and organizations that work at a level, particularly to provide us with grants, and are also able to provide us with similar material. But again, the truth of the matter is that it would be interesting to have a lot more of our public and private universities playing a major part in developing research, because a lot of the research that we have that have been provided by academia have been provided from university and colleges outside the country. We'll challenge our colleagues to relook that so they can provide this, especially the fact that this is an organized crime, and not only that, but it needs communities to be aware, since they play a part within their own, basically they fall on their own spot, so to speak. So that does, we will need a lot more data, a lot more organized, academically provided guidelines and directions, more than practitioners' point of views and perspectives, because we provide the information as is. Academia has a more intelligent way of organizing their written material, and also providing it in a way that promotes additional knowledge, skills, enhancement, and even opportunities for students to learn. But we are also happy to know that we've had a lot of students right across the country, and others from abroad reaching out to us to give them practitioners' perspectives and to act as key informants on a lot of the research that they take, usually from different perspectives. And therefore, this information, yes, does exist, but as I've said, in bits and pieces in different places. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So when I was doing my kind of debrief alone, trying to figure out what are we going to talk about, because today it was just supposed to be an overview. So I kind of broke it down as opportunities, success stories, and then gaps. But I realized from the conversation, especially that question, a lot of what I had identified as gaps is opportunities, what we hope to achieve by the end of this conversation. So I like what both of you have said. We do have a quote unquote gap when it comes to resources and information that is by us. So I know academia, we have amazing universities here. We have amazing CSOs working in the area of human trafficking. We have a lot of interventions, even by the government and many other stakeholders, but none of it is being documented. So that means if an organization comes, organization XYZ is created in 2022, they might have to start from the same level as organizations that have existed for 20 plus years, because there's no roadmap to guide them, that these are the interventions we've had. This intervention was lacking because of ABC, because somehow we haven't been documenting it. So I think a challenge from one of the opportunities from this conversation is, how can we work together as multiple stakeholders to remedy this? How can we create research? How can we evaluate the effectiveness of our contribution to this fight? So maybe we can have Joselyn students work with us and evaluate our 10 years and identify the gaps. Maybe they'll say, based on what you've been doing for the last 10 years, the next 10 years might be worse or might not go so well because you have not improved in certain areas. So I like what Paul has brought out. If we do the writing, or if the practitioners do the writing, it will be based on here and now. So the academia will allow us to have a balcony view of what is happening in the country. So it's easy to, you can easily stand based on the resources you have and tell us the response that you're doing would be better based on something that is being done in Ethiopia, or something different that is being done in South Africa, for example, or theories that have been you've been teaching and discussing in class can also help inform and edify our work. So I like that way of looking at it. So that's one of our opportunities. I know the team behind the scenes is writing all this down, so that by the time the series is done in July, we can look back and look at our key goals based on our discussion. I have a few more questions. I know we also might have more questions from the audience, so I'll let those come in as well as I ask one of my last ones. As we go forward with this conversation, I'd like to take the what I identified as a gap from my end. Maybe we could have the same being done from like a mirror, hold up a mirror to each other, because I know, for example, Paul, as you said, the academia would be better placed or would have a better way of telling stories and giving us resources and so on and so forth. Is there a gap, Jocelyn, that you've seen, or because you've interacted with CSOs in this area for a while, is there a gap that you've identified that you look at from an academic point of view and kind of wish you could point out and advise CSOs to remedy or to work on in a different way? Is there, as we begin this conversation, is there a challenge you'd like to pose to CSOs or other stakeholders as we move forward in this series? Like, for thinking of the panelists that are coming up after you, do you have advice for them or a challenge for them as they come in? What would you want to hear from them? What perspective would you want to hear from them?
Now, one very pressing thing that I would want to hear is just what I mentioned earlier, where we treat, if it is children, if it is communities, I mean, whoever the members of the communities as important partners in our work, towards anti-trafficking in persons. The other important challenge is that we establish modalities or structures through which we can partner with the actors on the ground to ensure that we work together as people who have the interest of, fighting this vice. And I want to ask you to give us opportunity as universities where we can have our students come for internships, where we can have our students come for, placement. And this will give our students opportunity to see what is really happening in communities, what is happening on the ground. And this can lead to a lot of interest in understanding more and also in interventions. I want also us to look at the interrelationship between this problem, which is a big social problem, not only in our country, but it crosses the boundaries, and other problems in our societies: poverty, governance, conflict, inequality, and in what ways we can work together to ensure that we get a complete transformation of societies when we are trying to fight these problems within the societies. So for us, like in the university, you would be our work towards producing graduates who have the heart and interest, who have the intention, who have the skills and competencies to transform themselves, to transform their circumstances and that of their own communities. So this is instilling a value among our communities, children, adults, and everybody else, to see themselves as actors, to see themselves taking roles through which they can transform their societies, to give them better opportunities to avoid getting into this problem because of other circumstances around them. So the other thing is that I would, wish to see a situation where we, as a university, we are working a lot towards, education that is service-oriented. And when you are doing education that is service-oriented, you require some space. You require partners. You require support from other actors and from the community for you as a university or for the student to get opportunity to give the service which they would wish to give to the communities. And lastly, is to help us, is to think about how is it that we can work together. I know most of you are doing advocacy, but in what ways can we engage communities to be advocates of those who are vulnerable within their communities, those who are so prone to being trafficked, those who have children who are prone to being trafficked because of the injustices that are happening in the communities, the inequalities, and so on. And lastly is, I would really wish to see where there is a lot of prosecution and also the results of prosecution of people who are trafficking others. Thank you, Michelle. That's a lot. That was a lot. Demanding too much.
I'm not demanding. You're not demanding too much. You're demanding. I think change comes from a point of we need to demand for change. Otherwise, if we don't, 5 years from now, we'll be in the same position, having a similar conversation, thinking, why didn't the people who are here 5 years ago advocate for this? So demanding change is important, and I'm grateful for the long list. I've written some of it down, but I know the team behind is also writing a lot of the notes down. So hopefully by the end of this series, we'll be able to have steps towards achieving at least some of what we've been working on. The next question will go to Paul. In the counter-trafficking movement, you've worked in this. Again, I keep on going back to experience, both of you, because I want people to understand that you're coming from a point of knowledge and a point of expertise. So, Paul, I know Jocelyn has asked us a lot, has referred to the community a lot in the conversations today. How has Trace particularly been engaging the community when it comes to issues of human trafficking? And not only the community where you're working, so the people who are living in Mombasa, but also the returnees. How do you engage them? How do you ensure that they have, and how do you protect them or guide them through the stigma that they may face, or guide them through facing what they may have run away from? So a lot of times people go out of the country looking for better opportunities due to poverty, for example, and then come back, and they're rescued, come back, and the poverty is still there. So how do you empower this person to look at this situation and not get re-trafficked, for example, or get into the same situation over again? So those are two questions. How do you, one question, but with two perspectives, the community in general and the people who are the returnees and migrants as well.
Thank you, Michelle. First, human trafficking is a complex social phenomena. It's so complex in the sense that in many instances, the victim of trafficking believes that they are beneficiaries of their circumstances, and that anything that goes wrong it is just bad luck. And I can give a very quick example. When a young girl has landed herself a foreign boyfriend, much older than her, the general community believes that she's a very lucky girl and that she'll now grow rich and she's in very good hands. And chances are the foreigner will die soon and she'll inherit a lot of wealth. And the perspective is that, wow, this punch, you punched it, you've done well. But from a human trafficking perspective, that's obviously a victim of trafficking. They are being used and abused. They are being exploited. Their youth is being wasted by someone else. And so the normalization of acts that have been there for a very long time makes it a very complex discussion and discourse with communities. So that's the first instance. But how do we then do it? At Trace Kenya, we simply discuss the very same thing I've just mentioned in a very candid and open manner in what you call community dialogue forums. This basically means that we sit with community members and ask questions around that kind of scenario. We ask each other who has punched it, who has benefited from that arrangement, who at the end of the day who is the lucky person? Is it the elderly 90-year-old man, or is it the 16, 17-year-old girl? And based on that, the same dialogue forum now flows to the community slowly. And over the years, we've seen slow but sure change of attitude towards that kind of arrangement. And it's not only just foreign and white, it could be local and wealthy but older. And it doesn't have to be man older, it could be female older and young man younger, and so on and so forth. But the idea is that circumstance okay? Are the community happy with it? Obviously, there are moral issues raised, there are economic issues, and other issues that are raised. But in the final analysis, values remain values, and communities end up understanding that values override all those circumstances that may look opportune at the moment, but in the final analysis, they don't benefit the community. Going to individuals who've gone abroad and come back, many of those who come back and they've been victims of labor migration or forced migration in the context of labor, we quickly put them through the process of psychosocial support and engage them in de-traumatizing them. We counsel them, offer them social support, ensure that then they are rehabilitated within the community. But in order for us to have their voice reach us regularly, we have allowed them to form themselves into groups in their near neighborhood, basically peer groupings. And these peer groupings, they are able to discuss their circumstance among themselves, and then they're able to enrich each other mentally and stabilize each other. And they're also able to welcome any newcomer who comes in and faces the same stigma they faced. And they're able to tell them that it was not your mistake that you came back empty-handed, but you are a victim of trafficking. In the same breath, we communicate the same to the larger community. But going forward, and because of the challenges of being able to hold those meetings, we are now developing a bigger strategies that we can communicate on FM stations. But the content remains the same, that if someone comes back and they are a victim of trafficking, it is not their fault. It is someone else's fault. They are actually criminalized by someone else. A criminal has made them what they are. So we are seeking to make community understand that. But over and above all those, we seek preventive measures to make sure that our communities are safer if they want to travel abroad, or if they want to make decisions or options similar to the one I've given you earlier of sex slavery or sexual exploitation. So in order to prevent this, then communities must be strengthened, particularly economically for women. So we are increasingly working with women folk and other vulnerable populations to enhance their ability for economic empowerment, in which way then they are able to protect their children from suffering the vicious cycle of vulnerability to trafficking over the years. So these are how we do it at Trace Kenya. But the bottom line is it must be discussed with communities, particularly where a lot of these issues are normalized, where communities believe this is a source of income, or there's nothing wrong with it, or if it's my life, why should it bother you? But then you need to discuss this beyond the moral aspect of it. There's also the criminal element in trafficking, and this gives us opportunities to address it in a more meaningful way than just picking victims and working with victims, but forgetting the larger community exists and there's a bigger influence from the larger community. That's how we do it.
Thank you very much. Before I let you go, something in addition to that question is, do you see the role of migrants stuck abroad in this conversation? Do you how do you see their role in this conversation? And have you been able to assist those who are stuck in the countries of destination to come back home?
Yeah, migrant voices are very important in this conversation. And the fact that we've been able to have a critical mass of returnees who are peerages, they've placed a lot of pressure on us as an organization to support their colleagues who are stuck abroad. Within our means, we've been able to bring back home a number of returnees or work with our other colleagues and networks to ensure that then a number of Kenyans stuck abroad are back home. Increasingly, we like the voices of beneficiaries and or returnees or victims and survivors to be louder than what it is. It is true, like for instance, in the coast that civil society, we are very few on this matter, but our voice will only be heard if the 20,000 plus citizens in the coast that have either experienced directly or indirectly the challenges that are faced by migrant labor are able to speak, then our constituents will be louder than one or two organizations that exist here. So we are hoping to enhance that. And as I've said, they themselves have put pressure on us, and in turn, we put pressure on other competent authorities to ensure that Kenyans are safely back home. Right.
Thank you very much. I'll just read through some of the questions that have been shared. So one of them is what you've just answered on the role of migrants stuck abroad. The second one is feedback. Appreciate the gender balance. Thank you very much. This doesn't always happen, with the highest percentage of victims of trafficking being women and girls. Where are we positioning them in this discussion? So I don't know. Okay. As Paul has mentioned, yes, the highest percentage of victims of trafficking is women and girls. And yes, we do have space for them in this conversation. Today, it's more balanced, which I think, based on your comment, is a plus, and we think is a plus. Something to also note is in the anti-human trafficking space, a lot of the organizations and representatives are actually women. So their voices are still very well amplified through the women who work in this space. But we also have space for boys and men, and that's actually something I wanted to ask Paul again. Sorry, Josephine, for leaving you hanging for a few minutes. But Paul, do we have resources to I think first, just to enlighten the listeners, could you give an overview of the response situation in the country? Whether it's shelters, the facilities we have, do they cater mainly for women, men, boys, girls? Would you kindly give us an overview? And then now, since this is the gaps that we have when it comes to working with boys and men who are victims of human trafficking.
Before I give those statistics, the listeners need to understand that women exhibit vulnerability, men exhibit resilience. You know, even when a man is hurting, or even a little boy, when he's hurting, he tries to show macho, you know, he's not suffering. And because of that, we've easily been able to pick women victims of trafficking. My experience tells me that really victims of trafficking are just 50-50, male and female. But women have a bigger burden, or they suffer a bigger burden when they are trafficked, in the sense that usually there's a baggage attached. You know, they could be a wife, a mother, or they could be traveling with a child. And men are likely to be suffering as individuals. So the woman herself could be a victim of trafficking, but she has a child or two tagging along. So even when facilities are availed for a woman, she could tag along with a child or two. A man is likely to walk in alone and leave alone. So that's why there's that skewed response from practitioners like ourselves. Coming to statistics, there are close to 140 shelters or rescue spaces for children and adults in Kenya that target various forms of violation, let me put it like that. And basically sexual violation, and violation against children, torture, physical harm and stuff. But of all these organizations and all these shelters, very few are specific to victims of trafficking. And victims of trafficking are different. Let me just explain this quickly. If someone is violated sexually, for example, they'll be a victim of, let's say, rape or defilement. It is something that happened on a certain date at a certain moment, and it is one incident, and probably the culprit is arrested. But if the same victim was to suffer sexual exploitation, it means they were suffering continuous rape and defilement over the period of confinement with the perpetrator. So it could be multiple rape over a period of time. Let's assume 3 months. And that's the difference. So if the persons are going through psychosocial support, obviously one needs more keener support than the other. Both violations are very grave and very bad, but certainly one needs more, and your guess is as good as mine. At certain times when individuals are made to be in sexual exploitation circumstances, they then take substance like drugs and stuff to be able to cope with their situation. Again, when you're trying to rehabilitate them, it means you're not only dealing with a violation, but you're also dealing with a person who suffers from substance abuse. That's how keen and neat it goes. In Kenya, there are only 2 shelters, one provided for men and one for boys, both of which are in Thika, I think. This data from the National Shelters Network. We have a shelter that is specifically for women and children, and so we're able to take in boys as well, as long as they're underage, as long as they're children. But again, there are no special shelters for men across the country. There is a huge opportunity there. Let me not use the word gap. There's a huge opportunity there to reach out, and even huge opportunity to reach out for victims of trafficking in various forms, including returnees who just need 5-6 days to recoup before they can then find their focus and direction to find out whether they should go home or to go back to the urban centers, or to understand their focus a little more if they've come back from a long exploitation abroad, or if the individuals within the country that just need to refocus. They need space, and a space which has expertise and professionals to help them to then refocus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was an in-depth answer, and even better still, because we have a lot more, we have a few more questions based on that. So referring to the gender imbalance and it being a delicate subject, which, as you've clearly explained, it is. Something also to add on is to the perspective of this being an opportunity is, unfortunately, with the absence of these facilities, survivors or victims of trafficking end up or may face re-victimization because facilities available to them are sometimes policed out, so, or even worse. So this, as you've clearly mentioned, is an opportunity for us to look at as stakeholders. How can we work together to give a solution to this, or how can we work together so that we are able to adequately protect survivors and victims and survivors who we encounter as civil society organizations as well as academia. Something else to note is this conversation is not limited to the stakeholders present today. It will be open to multiple stakeholders. So we'll have private sector joining the conversation. We'll have more CSOs joining, more people from academia. We'll have individuals and community leaders as well joining this conversation. So we aim to have an in-depth understanding of human trafficking from our perspective. What we realize is, I think we mentioned this earlier, that we're all touching the one part of the elephant and not recognizing we're all touching the same elephant. So we're hoping that this conversation allows us to see that we're connected, and furthermore allows us to see how we can work together. So yes, the conversation will be open to members of the public. I know that's one of the questions that it has been listed. Another question is whether do we plan to have these discussions on the mainstream media? I think this is a possibility we're open to discussing. I have been given a very firm yes from the people behind the scenes. So yes, we are going to have this conversation in mainstream media. Will we involve members of the public in these discussions? Yes, we will. How do we effectively combat human trafficking in relation to gender balance? I think we've addressed that. Based on the questions I see, I think we've covered all the questions that I had and questions that we've had from the members of the public. Also see that the time is fast spent. I know we were supposed to finish this discussion 14 minutes ago. So I'll do a quick wrap up. Paul and Joselyn, do you have any parting shot to the people who have joined today and are looking forward to joining us over the series, whether they choose to join us for 5 conversations or to join us for all 6 meetings? Do you have a parting shot for them or something that they can hope to see? Yeah, a parting shot, yeah. Something very brief that we don't keep them here for too much longer. So Joselyn, I'll start with you. Let's give Paul some time to catch his breath. Joselyn?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michelle, for this opportunity again. I want to say that, as you said earlier, we thought that a year on, when we are using this kind of platforms to engage one another, we are savvy, we are good. But my parting shot is that trafficking is happening in the house next to you. Trafficking is happening within your own community. Please learn more about human trafficking and, including how to identify or the possibility of identifying a person who has been trafficked, a child who has been trafficked. Also, find out, I'm sure we'll get from this discussion, the processes, the procedures we follow or that are followed to report cases of human trafficking. And the other thing I would want to tell you that I didn't mention is that we are working towards, eliminating violation of rights of children in different ways. And we have developed, courses for communities and also courses for all people in our university in child safeguarding and protection and child engagement. So these are ways through which we can engage communities, we can engage children to ensure that we are dealing with possibilities that can cause trafficking and trying to create an awareness so that people are aware on what to do. Thank you very much. I hope you join us for all the sessions. You're most welcome.
I think it's my turn to give my parting shot. To all participants, trafficking in persons follow normal pathways. You just need to have a critical eye, a little critical eye or mind to notice the difference. However, individuals will seek to control, subjugate, abuse, and exploit other individuals within your homes, in your neighborhoods, and you'll never know. You'll only notice the result. But if you have a slight critical eye and a mindset that says, could this situation not be okay, then you are likely to be able to disrupt some form of trafficking. 2 quick examples. In the last 1 year, as a result of COVID, very many girls have become expectant because they are staying in close neighborhoods with their exploiters. And the only results we knew was that there are X number of girls expectant. But in the same breath, there must have been X number of girls simply exploited, but they did not get expectant. There are equally an X number of boys that must have faced the same situation. Another good example, you may be traveling in a vehicle, and in that vehicle, there are 2 children also traveling along with you, unaccompanied, or basically 1 or 2 children traveling not accompanied by anyone. in normal circumstances, it will not bother you. But if you have the mindset that this child could probably be a victim of trafficking because they are unaccompanied, then it will set your mind rolling and give you some ideas how to disrupt this. So we must all play a part in disrupting traffickers' work. Otherwise, human traffickers are smart. They'll use the bus, they'll use the aeroplane, they'll use the M-Pesa, they'll use the local bank, but they're only smarter than the rest of us because they'll break their incomes into very little bits in a very short while so that the rest of us will not understand whether or not they were actually violating the rights of someone else. Or they'll normalize a situation that is very pathetic. The example I gave you of an elderly man living with a young girl, it looks very normal and communities have accepted it as okay. They'll pump into the heads of everyone that that circumstance is okay. Unless we disrupt that, then it thrives. Remember, human trafficking is now the second largest international crime after gun running. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul and Josephine, for your parting shot, for your participation in the panel today, for giving us an overview of the situation of human trafficking, as well as an overview of what people should expect in the coming weeks. I have enjoyed the conversation. I hope other people have too. And I look forward to from both sides. And I see Louis is back, so I'll also give a brief parting shot and hand it over to him. For me, it goes back to the title of this engagement: Know Better, Do Better. I hope that as Paul and Josephine have both very beautifully expressed, human trafficking does not happen in a vacuum. We need all of us to work together. We need to have a collaborative and approach to human trafficking, but we also need to hold ourselves accountable when it comes to this conversation of human trafficking. So my parting shot and what I hope you get to learn or see is how human trafficking is defined in your perspective. You must realize that we haven't gone in depth in defining human trafficking today, because human trafficking to someone who owns a farm or a private sector actor is different from what human trafficking looks like for an individual whose neighbor is exploiting their nanny, for example. Or human trafficking looks different based on the person who is in front of you, the person who is in your community being exploited. So we hope that, or I hope that, as we proceed with this conversation, you will be able to identify what human trafficking looks like in your home, in your community, in your family, so that you can be able to safeguard yourself, protect people in your community, protect your family, protect yourself as an individual as you live your life. Because I know a lot of times when you have this conversation, it's very far removed. It's the people who are going to Saudi Arabia looking for a job, for example. Or you forget that we also look for scholarships, we look for jobs abroad as well, and so on and so forth. So I hope by you participating in this conversation, you'll be able to identify what human trafficking looks like to you. And by that, you'll be able to safeguard yourself as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for leading us on the discussion and also interacting with the panelists. I also take time to appreciate our panelists, Paul and Josephine, for that in-depth discussion and sharing much information on regarding the questions that were coming from the moderator and those who participated through our Facebook and YouTube channel and within other platforms. I also take time to thank all the participants or the audience who took time just to have join us in this discussion. And we are going to have more discussions coming up. And as I said, we'll share this session with you early in advance so that you are able to prepare and also join us and also share more information as we continue the discussion. If you would want a recap of this discussion, it is free there on our YouTube page and our Facebook page. You can go and rewind and just get to listen again on on what we discussed. And also introduce your friends and colleagues, or even family members, just to recap on what we had discussed in this session. And we'll be able to share more sessions as we go on forward through the same platforms. That is Heart Kenya YouTube channel and Heart Kenya Facebook page. How I wish if you would want more information, because this is a continuous discussion, you might want another information maybe tomorrow, or you would want to report a case of trafficking. You can reach out to us through our social media platform, or you can call +254 780 211 113. I will repeat, +254 780 211 113. This is our helpline number for Heart Kenya. You can reach out to seek more information or report a case, or just share a comment or question with regards to these discussions as we proceed. Lastly, invite more stakeholders, invite more community members to be part of this session so that we can build each other to understand matters human trafficking and how best do we now work in collaboration, be it from other stakeholders or the community in general, to combat human trafficking. I wish you the best in the ongoing upcoming days as we continue this discussion. Let us see each other in the next sessions. The next session coming in on 9th June 2021. Thank you very much. Well, sorry, I'm being asked how we can reach Tangaza and Trace Kenya. Probably Paul, just to get back to you, probably how do the people reach out to Trace Kenya for information or for services that you offer in combating trafficking? Paul?
Our easiest reach is through our email address, info@tracekenya.org. info@tracekenya.org. So anybody who needs information can just reach us on that email or check on our website, which is tracekenya.org. And there's a space for inquiries, and we shall be able to give feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Josephine, you said, how do we get to reach out to Tangaza College for more academic discussion on the same?
For Tangaza, you check our website, which is, one second. Tangaza website, Papa. What has stressed you in school, ma'am? You don't look happy. Sorry, 1 minute. Our website is tangaza.ac.ke, and you'll find the information from the website. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll be able also to share more information on other service providers and other counter-trafficking actors and partners who offer these support services as we continue this session in the following weeks to come. Thank you very much and have a lovely rest of the day and rest of the week.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
This week, yes, after best and last group. Yeah.
Hello, Paul. Hello. Hello, Paul. Nishamwambia ametoka.